Last August, Richard Russell, a 29-year-old baggage handler at SeaTac International Airport, took a twin turboprop Q400 that had been parked for the night, flew it for some 25 miles, then deliberately nosedived into the Puget Sound off the coast of Washington state. Among the despairingly poignant aspects of the final moments before Rich's death was his determination to execute a barrel roll before finding a solitary place to crash the plane. The key moment of this surreal event was the final interaction he had with an air traffic controller, during which an anxious, distracted, and clearly troubled young man attempted to make humorous small talk by asking whether an airline company would give him a job as a pilot if he was able to land the plane safely. The ATC replied, "You know, I think they'd give you a job doing anything if you could pull this off." Richard then nervously laughed at the notion and simply said, "Yeah, right. Nah, I'm a white guy." We will never know what combination of reasons led him to take his own life, but this final ominous exchange resonates strongly with a growing problem. White men across the West are taking their lives at terrifying rates. Another sign of something deeper in the nature of Richard's death was the response from the European nationalist community on social media. He was quickly given the admiring and sympathetic hashtag of Sky King, and whereas the mainstream news and all aspects of the liberal political establishment appeared to ignore the story altogether, hundreds of social media accounts altered their usernames to include plane emojis, producing tribute videos, and expressing sincere condolences for the loss of this likable young man. Even setting aside the epic nature of Richard's death, his suicide clearly touched a nerve. But why? A primary reason is that the New Right, more than any other Western cultural or political group, is already keenly aware that white heterosexual males are being forced into an existential crisis by contemporary social and political developments. In 2015, 2 Princeton economists found that the death rate among white middle-aged men, rather than falling like with most other groups, was skyrocketing. According to suicide prevention expert Dr. Christine Moutier, middle-aged white men account for over 70% of deaths from suicide each year. 9/10 of them are from the lower socioeconomic class. When combined with the staggering death tolls of white males from the opioid crisis, no other combination of diseases achieves such mortality figures. Men in the UK, for example, between the ages of 20 and 49, are more likely to die from suicide than any other cause of death. Even the Australian government announced that male suicide rates constituted an epidemic. Aside from instances of personal individual trauma, there are 3 layers of explanation for this unfolding and worsening catastrophe, only some of which are discussed with any merit in the mainstream media, and they can be broadly defined as cultural, sexual, and racial. In the realm of culture, it is clear that Western civilization has fully entered a stage of sterility and degradation, resulting in a pervasively meaningless, spiritually barren human life. An unavoidable factor in this context was the rise of technology and the aftermath of the Industrial Revolution, or at least the spirit which accompanied these developments, with Martin Heidegger best identifying this malaise in his 1954 work, The Question Concerning Technology. The culture of modern technology, with its emphasis on unending exploitation of resources and a hostility to obstacles of any kind, is inherently antagonistic to any non-fluid aspects of human life, such as biological sex differences, borders and nation-states, Christian, pagan, or romantic beliefs in purpose and higher meaning, or even the notion that a man could have a career in a single field. In fact, our entire education system is now built on providing students with sets of skills, rather than expertise in any particular field, the goal being the production of a pool of potential employees adaptable to a wider variety of surrogate situations. The Financial Times is now advising young graduates to prepare for at least 5 different careers during their lifetime, many graduating from college without a path or grand project by which to navigate their lives. Their existence is doomed from the outset, only to be dominated by transience and interchangeability, rendering them quite literally into spokes on a wheel. The next set of explanations for this epidemic concerns the revolution in sexual relations. While being stripped of any meaning, the modern working and educational environments have been thoroughly feminized. Well-paid industrial jobs have all but disappeared in the West, being replaced with unskilled work, low-wage roles that privilege female-oriented skill sets, or the equally feminine office and middle managerial class of brown-nosing occupations. Affirmative action policies, explicit or not, are leading to a massive influx of women at all levels of the education system, displacing men while marginalizing male learning preferences. One of the great lies of the equality agenda is that it is without any costs. Nothing could be further from the truth. What equality in fact achieves is the redistribution of power, influence, and meaning for those sections of the populace deemed privileged by the liberal left establishment. In the United States, the academic performance of boys has been in decline since 1960. Similar patterns have been observed in Canada, the UK, and Australia. The marginalization and feminization of males in educational and workplace environments proceeds unchallenged because of the widespread demonization of white masculinity in this postmodern, sterile, resource-focused culture. Jonathan Bowden once opined that masculinity is a sacred thing. Channeled aggression, stoicism, self-control, ambition, a keen sense of honor, and when necessary, well-ventilated fury are indeed sacred aspects of Western masculinity, having been marked upon our souls since before the Iliad was written. For centuries after Homer, these traits were admired and praised, being worked into poetry and art. Today, however, all aspects of this masculinity are designed as undesirable, declared toxic, and scheduled for management by the feminized technological state. The final set of explanations for the explosion in white male suicides involves race. We now live in a time where almost every project or endeavor is measured according to prevailing ideological dogma, with that primary measure being the allowable number of white males those projects or endeavors will involve. Too many white men has become the greatest condemnation that can be leveled at any film, play, book, sport, academic discipline, civic institution, or government. The absence or elimination of the white man, the new social pariah, thus becomes an inherent moral good within the culture. Given this state of affairs, it wasn't at all surprising when, 2 years ago, Democrats in Maine were caught on video laughing about the rising suicide rates among white males. They undoubtedly felt that this had become acceptable because their target group had been thoroughly dehumanized by their culture, feminism, and the racial dynamics of the liberal multicultural state. Of course, the most observable manifestation of this engineered socialization is affirmative action. The exact figures for the millions of white men excluded from employment in the societies built by their forefathers will never be discoverable. What is knowable, however, is the very existence of affirmative action is a demoralizing affront to the dignity of every hard-working white man in the West. Most poignantly, and within the context of this present essay, this disheartening effect was etched into every syllable uttered by Richard Russell when he balked and said, "Nah, I'm a white guy." Faced with such an overwhelmingly oppressive social atmosphere, it isn't surprising that so many white men are finding themselves in places of despair. On a final note, in Schopenhauer's essay on suicide, he states that the general view of suicide is one of cowardliness, that only a madman would commit it, and other similarly vulgar judgments, or that it is morally wrong, despite being nothing in the world a man has a more incontestable right to than his own life in person. In explanation of Richard Russell's case, perhaps, as Heidegger would have it, he quite literally lived towards death. Faced with a life stripped of any meaning, only an end imbued with such gave him some last tangible feeling of control. Almost every aspect of his final moments could be understood this way, from the conversation with the air traffic controller to the barrel roll against the western sky. He could not determine how he lived, so he determined how he would die, and in this, perhaps, something meaningful can be derived.